Okay, welcome to the Bedford Select Board meeting. Today's March 9th at 7 o'clock, and we're going to start, as always, with citizen input. And I would ask you to, those in the room, to come forward to this microphone if you would. Is there anyone wishing to speak public comment who's present here? Wow, no. Okay. Anyone online, Matt?
If you're online and you'd like to speak, please just raise your hand. Mr. Chair, I don't see any hands raised at the moment.
Okay, if there's someone who's Johnny come lately, maybe we'll let him in. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item in the agenda. Matt, do you want to start that?
I'll just share my screen. Fire station reuse proposal. Okay, so our office, according to the select board's goals for this year, to continue the work on reuse of the existing fire station. Well, I should back up. The goal was really to buildings space needs in general, but one of the biggest pieces of that was the reuse of the existing fire station at 55 The Great Road. MAPC has put together a proposal with us based on some feedback from our office and the Planning and Economic Development Office. And I'm not going to read through it entirely, but in short, they have professional staff who run these types of technical assistance activities all the time. They'll go through a few phases. First is meeting with some municipal stakeholders, our department heads, particularly there's at least 2 or 3 departments that are interested in the buildings. To get a baseline, and then they're going to walk through what we currently have planned is 2 public input sessions. Both you'll be able to provide input. Hopefully the second public input session, though, we'll be able to have things narrowed down a little bit from the first one. So it will be a little bit of a process, but you could come to either of the 2 public hearing processes. Then they'll put together some recommendations based on the data that they collect, and they'll provide it to the board. The total is $18,900. It's broken down into the initial building diagram phase, which is just a $1,600 phase. They're going to come out, do an inspection of the building and a walkthrough with us, put together some schematics and designs that we can use for the public hearing process. Then basically $6,000 each for the 2 public engagement processes, and we're going to work very closely with them to advertise them and have staff available at them. But they're going to be instrumental in those, and then $4,000 for their final summary and presentation to the select board. This technically being under $50,000, a contract of $18,000 normally wouldn't come to the select board, but because this process is something that has to be, so involved with the board, and it's meant to be a public process, we wanted to bring this initial phase in front of the select board as well. I feel like my microphone's cutting in and out. No? You can hear okay? All right.
Beautiful. So is this a bit of a blank slate? They'll be open to all ideas from it's going to be used for X departments and all the way to we should sell it?
Sure. No. So in our initial discussions with them, we set the groundwork of our initial expectations, which is, selling it is off the table. It's definitely going to remain a municipal use. And we let them know which uses we've already heard in the community, and they sort of use that initial 1 or 2 meetings with us to help identify the perfect staff from their team to run the process. The other thing that we're doing is we're going to have them meet with the departments that have some interest in potentially expanding first. What we don't want to do, and we went back and forth on this, is have the public input session first say, we have this 10,000 square foot building, what do you want to do? And people come up with ideas to use the entire building, and then sort of after say, oh, we actually have 2 or 3 departments that need half the building for this space. So we're going to keep an open mind throughout the entire process, but we want to incorporate some of the initial department feedback in before the first public input session. So at the first public input session, we can say, I don't know, what would you like as a community to see here? Maybe we talk about some of the ideas we've already heard. But at least we'll be able to put into the mix. There are some departments that are interested in it. Do you think as members of the public, these would be good municipal uses for some portions or all of the building per se? So we want to use that initial feedback from the departments as part of the public, sort of hearing and discussion process. No, we do have, Padma has raised her hand. I don't know if that was like late for the public comment or if it's.
Let's finish this conversation, then we can go to Padma. I think that would be fair. The only thing I would have to add before bringing it to the rest of the board is it's super premature, but I wouldn't mind having on the menu of items, selling it, and then whatever we want with the proceeds, including reducing outstanding debt for the new fire station. I'm not saying I'm right on that, but I think that's something that we should have on the table. Maybe not with this study, but I don't want to preclude that from a possibility. One person, yeah, on that one view.
Yeah, I mean, I think to that point, that could be done definitely independent of this as it, or after, a simple speak to our assessors.
Agreed. So with that, I'm going to go all the way down to the far end of the table. Terry, any comments or questions on this?
I would agree with the chair that it might be a little premature, and I would just echo what you said.
Thank you. Bopa.
Yeah, so can you hear me? So a few years ago, we did the space needs study, and I think this building was a part of it, which I don't remember the recommendations or anything like that, which I don't think there was a recommendation. But are we going to use any of, are you okay? Are we going to use any of the information there for this at all?
Sure. A few of the departments that were noted as potentially needing some additional space, I anticipate are going to be part of the process. First and foremost, one of the big ones is the food bank. We know that's one we've talked about a lot. Again, just part of the process, not promising anything or trying to jump the gun. And the other is, we talked a lot about Old Town Hall and Bedford TV, and or the Historical Society and their, interplay there. The Historical Society would obviously like some more room in that building. So those are two departments. And there may be one or two others that, we're not sure yet if they'd be a good fit. But the same types of things you saw in the building use study, some of those same needs exist.
What's that, Boba? Yeah. Sean.
So I think you answered part of the question because I was going to ask what some of the proposals are. I mean, respect to the others that have spoken out in favor of selling, but I'm not in favor of selling. I think I know we have financial issues, but it's rare that you have an opportunity like this to have a community building. Yeah. But I'm wondering if there was also some talk about saving at least some of the space for a communal space to have performances or art shows or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, we didn't talk about that yet. In speaking with MAPC, we let them know that on the public side, that's one of the big, pieces that we've heard, culture and arts and public use of a portion of the building. So we've let them, know that, and they're sort of expecting that that's some of the feedback that we'll receive during the public hearing process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Okay, let us now, if Padma is still available, we'll give her 3 minutes of public input.
Padma, you should be able to speak now. Padma, I see you're off mute, but we can't hear you at the moment.
Hello?
Oh, now we can hear you. Okay.
Okay. Okay, awesome. Thank you. So apologies if I missed the public comment. I was a couple minutes late, but I do want to speak about the warrant article, which I'm sure is a surprise to nobody. Sorry, Padma Chowdhury from 38 Battle Flag Road. First, I would like to note that the Article 26 of the warrant language reflected in the board packet that was posted just a few hours ago today doesn't reflect the changes proposed, discussed, and supported at the public hearing at the last select board meeting. While it has been represented to us that the spirit of this amendment is to introduce clarity, all of the language we have proposed to introduce that clarity has not been included, including the reference to the Mass General laws and the language about the appointment of such department heads. Last time we did talk about, and the town manager suggested that he would be making a change that was only to the language referring to the employees and not this other language that I just referenced. I would like to be very clear that the library trustees feel very strongly that this amendment and this process seems to be removing power from a board that was elected to perform these functions and has been successfully performing these functions from the beginning. It's being done for hypothetical reasons that are not based in fact. There are no liability issues. There are no HR issues that have been unsuccessfully managed. The trustees successfully hired a director and worked collaboratively with the town manager to do so. The citations to other town library directors that have been made are specifically Arlington and Concord are references to towns that do not have elected boards for these functions. The members of these boards are appointed. So in Concord and Arlington, they're appointed boards, not elected boards. So it's an unfair analogy. But the next step seems to be, to me, the next step, next logical step in this process, the elimination of these elected boards now that their authority has been removed. So after months of asking, the library trustees finally received a second opinion on the question of whether the town manager even has this authority. And we did receive it just, I think, this past week. At best, the opinion is unclear. Let me read to you some portions of the opinion. It says, arguably, this provision grants broad authority to the town manager, in my opinion. However, the town's past practices indicate that certain positions may have been filled using an alternate procedure, i.e. hired by an elected board. It would be prudent to amend to add clarity by listing which positions are under the authority of the town manager. So at best, it does not definitively state that the town manager already has such authority over these positions. Moreover, the bylaws for years have been very clearly stated that this authority sits with the elected board, such as the library trustees, and read together with the charter, the intent is clear and supported by the history of how this town has been operationalized for years. At the
Padma,
very
thank you. Padma, the 3 minutes is lapsed.
if I could finish, Paul, I just have one paragraph left. So
You
at the
may.
very beginning of this process, thank you. At the very beginning of this process last summer, the trustees suggested that we don't think that there is ambiguity, but if there is, we are happy to clarify the process with an amendment that codifies what the process should be, but the current proposed amendment is an overreach. Instead of clarifying that there should be discussion on potential HR issues or administrative matters, it shifts the entire power structure from the way that it has always operated. We still feel this way and feel extremely frustrated that instead of working on an amendment language in a collaborative fashion, we've been shut out and forced to keep speaking up in public comments. And so as a library board, the library trustees cannot support this amendment, but would also like to explicitly note that we disagree that the language of the charter already gives the authority to the town manager. Thank you.
Okay.
Just for clarity, not to debate, could I make a comment to clarify?
You may clarify.
And I will certainly clarify in more detail later. I'm looking at it now. I do see the words, the appointment of such department heads by the town manager shall be made subject to the approval of the respective elected boards. So I don't believe that was removed. If there's another such, we should add back in. I'm happy to, we can do that tomorrow with council, but the intent was not to remove the word such. It's subject to approval is there, and the full exclusion of the library director as requested is still there. The reference to Mass General Law, which we normally wouldn't include, has been removed, but the other two pieces, I'm looking in the copy online and the copy in the board's packet, I do believe those two critical pieces are still there. So, but I can talk to Padma offline tomorrow, or maybe we can discuss it again when we get to that article later.
Okay, I'll reserve any comments, if any, until we get to the town warrant piece of it. Okay, energy and sustainability is next. I don't think so. Matt, on the MAPC and the,
Sure. I mean, since it's on the packet in front of you, if you'd like to take a vote in support of the proposal, you could. Again, I think probably technically not required, but it would be a show of support for that.
I support it if the other select board members do, and I'm happy to entertain a motion.
Move that the select board expresses support for the MAPC proposal.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. Okay, thank you for that, Bopa. Okay, do you want to take the next one, Matt? Energy and sustainability?
Yes. So, as requested by the board, as well as in consultation with the Energy and Sustainability Committee, we put together a brief update on the status of our specifically municipal energy and sustainability projects over the last few months, mainly spearheaded by Erin Dorr in the Facilities Department. And then we have a few brief updates from our office as well. As we've talked about publicly, but we did incorporate in here to start just some changes to positions in the planning department with the community planning administrator and, more importantly, the community planning and sustainability manager. We circulated that job description to the ESC and Mothers Out Front, and we're ready this week to get the job description posted and finalized. We've incorporated a lot of feedback. We also accepted feedback from the Housing and Economic Development Director, Planning Director, HR Director. Specific to other projects, I'm not going to go through in great detail what Erin has been working on in consultation with a few other departments, but the way she's broken down the memo, and we're happy to provide this information again in the future as needed. Some of the major accomplishments, it's broken down into projects in process, grants. You'll note we did receive a Green Community Grant for lighting conversions. A few other grants are in process at the moment. She's done a lot of great work on partnerships and collaborations, working on our website, solar canopies, communication and engagement, and then we even have a whole section on awards and recognitions because of a few separate, just in the past few months, winning a Mass Recycle Municipal Award, DESE Green Ribbon Schools Award, as well as being certified as a climate leader, all within the last 6 months. She also put together some of her priorities for the next quarter, and then she does have a full building energy report in here as well. In addition to this, as I know, one of the next steps is going to be get the community planning and sustainability manager position filled as soon as possible. And then our expectation is that that person, as well as the municipal energy and sustainability individual, are going to be meeting and speaking on a very regular basis. And we're also going to be incorporating energy and sustainability updates into our local permitting meetings, which are held monthly by the Housing and Economic Development Director. And that's where he brings in the planning office, the code enforcement office, Department of Public Works, and our public safety offices to talk about any major projects that are going on. But it's a great opportunity where everyone is already getting together monthly to make sure that energy and sustainability has like a standing item on those agendas to really increase the collaboration even further. So I want to bring this to your attention. If you have any questions, I'm happy to report back if I can today, or certainly at the next meeting if you have real specific detailed questions.
I am going to start with questions down the far end again with Terry, if any.
I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Bopa looks like she has a few.
I did have a few questions for Erin, but I do want to make, first of all, I really appreciate this report, updates, and materials. As you know, when this position was changed from a director to a manager, I admit that I did have some hesitation during that time because, change of scope in terms of, I was concerned about grants and, and if the change would slow the work or anything down. But after reviewing Erin's memo, I'm really like impressed of like the work that she and the town has been doing for the past 6 months. It's really helpful. So I appreciate what you've presented, and congratulations on all of these accomplishments. I do have a couple of questions for Erin. Obviously, she's not here. I particularly like the mapping of the grants that she shared. And I was wondering, like, are there any particular projects that are especially competitive for funding right now in terms of, with grants and everything like that, and looking ahead to the next 12 months or so, how could we be more helpful?
Okay.
Town committees.
Yeah, and we can have her, come back at any time and or, provide written feedback, and I can maybe answer some of these questions like a little bit. For example, the Green Communities grants this year, we received $14,000. We're kind of maxing out on that grant. There's a lot of newer communities in there, but thankfully now that we're part of the climate leaders, it's going to really unlock, hopefully one large project for us soon. Because she had come to the last, I think 3 select board meetings when this had been talked about either in person or virtually, I, didn't want to too much make it just about the person, more about the position. So we gave her the night off tonight because she put the memo together. But she is always willing to come back and talk if needed. So that was the only reason, just to have a little bit of separation between the individual and the work that's being done. Yeah, if there are any other questions. Did you have more?
No.
Sean?
Yeah, so as Boba said, thank you for putting this together. It's good to see it all, and I hope this can be a regular thing where we get regular feedback, because I think it's helpful to see what's going on. One question I did have, because I know this has come up a couple times, is coverage of meetings as the energy and sustainability manager. So can you speak to that? Do we, between Erin and, maybe potentially the new person, be able to cover all the regional meetings where grants are being discussed? And
Yeah, no, I mean, as many as reasonably possible, certainly all of the state-sponsored ones, and then as many of the nonprofit-sponsored ones as reasonably possible. Even with 2 individuals, it might not be possible to attend everything, but we make a concerted effort, and in the future, some certain, webinars, conferences, things may be geared more towards one person than the other. If it's geared more towards municipal projects, it would be more so Erin going. If it's more, or grant programs or changes in state law that affect municipal, might be them. But if it affects incentives that the community and residents can apply for, it would then likely be the community planning and sustainability manager. But the short answer is with 2 people, it'll definitely give them more capacity.
okay, thanks. And over the past 6 months, have there been any, course changes or anything that has come up that, is it like a lesson learned or a different way of doing things now, or is it pretty much the way you thought it would go?
No, I'd say overall it's going very well. She has a phenomenal handle on the municipal side. I do think it's going to be a big help when this other position gets filled. So we've been, in the meantime, Erin has come across a number of things that may be more appropriate for like the community side, and she'll forward those off to myself and Eric Salerno, and we talk about those internally. So she has been sharing the data with us, and we're really looking forward to having another person that we're going to be able to, redelegate some of that work to. So I do think it's a smart move to have this other position changed. So it's, another dedicated person on that side.
Okay, well, thank you, and thank Erin if she's watching on video.
So, Matt, my only question is, of all the opportunities to go to seminars, et cetera, right? Is there, can you say whether or not we should be going to 100% of those because they're all going to be great? Or how do you winnow down the better from the, we've heard this 10 times before.
Sure. And, you know, that might be, you know, one of the other things too, that from the outside, there are, on occasion, there are things that we maybe have already received, you know, updates on internally or gone to a virtual webinar on. And then if the regional XYZ group wants to do a panel on it, it may not be in our best interest to spend 2 hours of tap time going to that if we're already fully familiar with the program. So it only makes sense, one, if you're going for purely networking purposes, which is always, you know, still a lofty goal, but you don't want to be doing that every single day. You know, but I don't know, I think to your point, if it's something we're familiar with, we're going to have to make a judgment call on whether it's worthwhile just going for networking purposes or if we're actually going to learn something new from it.
Who makes those judgments? And are you, for example, pretty comfortable being able to discern between, yeah, we got to go to this one, or it wouldn't be bad, or is it just trial and error?
Yeah. I do have conversations with the staff about that very question quite often. A lot of the time, they will come to me and say, I think it's really important that I go to this, you know, conference meeting or whatnot offsite. And then I know it's something that, one, it interests them and something they need to learn about. I occasionally come across things that I'll send to them and I'll say, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this topic, but, you know, if you aren't, you may want to consider going to this. And then they kind of make the decision on their own. There's a lot going on in the energy and sustainability, you know, world. We get lots of recommendations from, you know, members of like Mothers Out Front, Energy Sustainability Committee. And we've gone to, you know, quite a few different events that they've recommended that have been good events. Some we were aware of, some we weren't aware of. So we take those one at a time. We're able to attend, or it makes sense. You know, some on the nights or weekends can be a little harder, but again, with 2 people, that become a little.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you. Anything else on this, or can we keep moving on?
Get Terrence?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, with that, we shall move on. And this one is a update from TAC on some legislation that's kicking around the Beacon Hill. And we discussed this last Wednesday, and there was someone who was keenly interested in it. And he's coming to the podium or whatever. And John McLean, do you want to?
Try out the new mic.
Yeah.
I have some slides, so I assumed we.
You didn't mention slides when I invited you.
I think we just got, we got them today, right? I'm loading them up now.
Yeah. So John McLean, 8 Maple Street, but actually speaking for TAC. So at the last TAC meeting on Wednesday, we voted, except for Paul, who abstained because he's on the select board. And
Was forced to abstain.
yes, you were forced to abstain. We explained our standard procedure. Voted to request that select board consider supporting these bills. So currently in Massachusetts, automated public safety or automated traffic safety cameras are illegal, right? So if you want to put up the echo is very difficult to deal with. So if you want to put up a camera that takes pictures of people speeding and sends out fines, that's illegal in Massachusetts. It is legal in 22 other states. And for the past several legislative sessions, bills have been kicking around to make it legal in the United States and, in Massachusetts. Next slide, please. Okay. So the legislation gives cities and towns, not the state, the option to use automated traffic safety cameras that can issue fines for what's known as a camera enforceable violation, which is either exceeding the speed limit, running red lights, turning right on red where prohibited, which I don't actually think we have any place like that in town, or blocking the box. We certainly have box blocking in town, and we certainly have speeding. Next slide, please. So the ask was, TAC discussed this a year ago. We discussed it again this week, and we're fairly enthusiastic about the about the possibility of using automated enforcement. But you may have noticed the Massachusetts State Legislature is not the most productive legislature in the land. And this bill is, and we're nearing the end of the legislative cycle, and this bill is sort of on the cusp. So we would like the Bedford Select Board to think about endorsing this legislation and passing that endorsement on to our representatives. This would be a new tool that municipalities could use. And in the case of Bedford, deployment of this tool would be purely under local control, in this case, the Select Board, right? So Select Board would have to vote to say, we want a speed camera on Shawsheen Road, for example. Next slide. So why is this useful? I think speeding is probably the most interesting wrinkle. I mean, red lights are fairly obvious. Blocking blocks is fairly obvious. In Massachusetts, speed is the primary factor for 1/3 of all vehicle fatalities. And in the United States overall, it's the top identified reason for fatalities. It's slightly less prevalent. Like I said, traffic safety cameras are legal in 22 other states, and by setting those cameras as well as cameras in other countries, we see a 20 to 70% reduction in speeding. The National Highway Transportation Safety Authority did I think what you could refer to as a meta study that suggested that they reduced crashes by 30 to 40%. Next slide, please. So like I said, these cameras can, after human review, can issue a fine. The fines can vary between $25 and $150. They go to the owner of the vehicle for reasons that will become obvious in a minute or two. They do not impact insurance, but they can eventually result in you being unable to renew your car registration if you don't pay them. They can be contested. And the municipality also has an option to issue a warning instead of a fine, and in the beginning they have to issue warnings. Next slide, please. There are a bunch of traditional concerns with traffic safety cameras, privacy invasion, being used for revenue enhancement, as people say, versus public safety, and then equity and fairness. This is not the first time this legislation has appeared in Beacon Hill. And they put a lot of work into to address these specific issues. Next slide, please. So on privacy, you can only record when there's a violation, right? So it's not constantly filming. It's only when you detect speeding, it will take a picture of your license plate. And that recording has to be destroyed within 48 hours of final disposition. So, when you pay it or when it gets revoked or overturned. And in between, there's a whole bunch of safety in place. This data will not be going to sell you insurance or your insurance company or a federal agency. It's protected. It's not public record. It can't be sold. And to sort of release it will take a court order. Cameras can't take recordings of the front of vehicles and must avoid identifying vehicle operators, passengers, and contents. So this is not a great tool for public surveillance. Next slide. Sorry, Paul. So cities and towns can use the fines to cover costs, but any excess will go to the state transportation fund. The state itself cannot deploy the cameras. So you have a case where the people deploying the cameras will not financially benefit from them. And you could imagine some backdoor through vendors and kickbacks, but that's also been circumvented by the legislation. And we can't do it on a stealth basis. We have to post, oh, there's a camera here. So there is fair warning. I think 2 more slides, Paul. And then finally, equity and fairness protections. Like I said, recordings don't capture vehicle occupants. Towns have flexibility in issuing warnings versus fines, but there has to be a objective and consistent written policy. It doesn't require a traffic stop. As we know, traffic stops can be dangerous to both the police and to the public, and of course, that danger goes away. The cameras themselves have been shown to be non-biased, but of course, how the cameras are deployed can introduce bias. I don't see this as a problem for Bedford, but if you have qualms about the state as a whole, and because of the strong notion of local control embedded in this law, if a municipality decides to issue, to deploy these cameras, it's really they're impacting their own population, and because the profit motive has been removed, I think most of the motivation for exploitation will be removed. Final slide. So TAC views it as a valuable tool and has been shown to be effective in reducing crashes and injuries, some of which we have suffered in Bedford over the past few years. The proposed legislation has many protections in place to limit abuse. We think it would be a valuable option for Bedford, and we urge TAC to endorse and pass that endorsement along to our state reps.
Thank you, John. That was perfect. I'm going to start down the other end. Sean, do you have anything?
Yeah, so thank you, John. And I am a supporter of this. I've always kind of lamented how still in this country we have 30 or 35,000 traffic deaths every year, despite all of the technology we have. And a lot of it is because of, people breaking the rules. So a bill like this, I appreciate on a few levels. One, because it's very black and white. I mean, you can prove someone ran a red light. You can prove someone was speeding. It's not a judgment call. And I appreciate the data that it does cut down on crashes. And we've seen pedestrian deaths in town, and those always hit very hard. It's tragic when that happens. There's always a family behind the person. So this can reduce deaths in town, and otherwise I'm in favor of it. I think there have been adequate safeguards. And the other thing I think about too is normally the select board doesn't take positions on items of state or national, but I think this where it directly would allow us to have a tool, I think that's something we could take a position on. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Sean. A couple of comments. One is, I think that presumably it's not written in stone what's been proposed up on Beacon Hill. So, some things said it's still a mixed bag. I'm not really sure, but whatever. That's fine. Second thing is, if I could wave a wand and we could apply it to start with people who go around school buses when, they're not supposed to, right? My Lord, that would be a nice one, right?
So there's already a law in place that allows that.
Cameras? Yeah. Okay. So, but anyway, the point is, I think of the infractions that this might catch, there's a range. And obviously, well, to me, the worst of the worst is someone who's going around a school bus, right? I think you're right. But in terms of how can I say it? It's not exactly apt because, as you say, the state can't do it yet, right? Stagosh, I think it's almost a right to speed on the Mass Pike if you're in the far left lane. And if I'm going to get a ticket in the mail for going 75 on the Pike, no, I don't think so. Right? And that's not meant to be flip. I don't think people have a God-given right to, exceed the speed limit, but I'm that's a little bit of a concern with me. And then just lastly, well, I'll leave the last part alone. Bopa, anything else for you?
So just like Sean said, overall, I think it's positive. And instead of repeating what Sean says, I feel like typically we don't endorse. And then my concern is that once we start endorsing things, it's like, do we keep on getting things to endorse or, and I do understand what you're saying, Sean, that this is actually, it coincide with, our priorities and things like that. But it's just my concern of traditionally, we don't endorse, and once we start endorsing, how do we go forward, right? And then I know this is not the discussion for tonight, but I am concerned in terms of, like I said, overall, I think it's positive for the cause of speeding and everything. I do think it's a great tool. I just, and again, this is not what you're looking for tonight, or this is not the discussion, but what I'm concerned about in terms of town, like who's paying for the cameras and how many are we putting and how, you know what I mean? Like all these, and how do we identify what we're putting them for? I don't know if that answers anything.
Perfectly good points. And Terrence?
First of all, just wanted to say thank you for all of your work on this. And we all know that we've had incidents in this town, and we need to try to improve safety at all costs. I just have a little bit of a problem with this technology. And my main problem is the fact that the ticket goes to the owner. So you could have a situation where someone lends their car to someone else, and the ticket is going to go to the owner. You also have a situation, or could have a situation, where someone is out of state and the ticket goes to them, goes to the owner of the car, but the owner of the car wasn't driving the car, and then there's an issue of whether or not they have jurisdiction over the person who wasn't driving the car. So, yeah, I might be making this a little bit more complicated than it has to be, but I can tell you, I'll just give you a quick example. I was driving my wife's car out of state, and I'm not going to say what state it was, but there was a picture of the car and indicated that they believed that I had committed an infraction. I did not think I did, but the ticket went to my wife because it was her car. And so she didn't have the obligation to testify and say who was driving her car on the one hand, and on the other hand, my name was nowhere on the ticket. So I think there's a lot of issues with that legislation. If it passes, maybe we can revisit it, but that's my problem with it.
All set, Terrence?
I'm all set.
And I'm going to take the prerogative, just add one more comment. I actually do think this is one that it's fair for us to, I don't want to do it tonight personally, but I think somewhere down the road, I think it's fair for us to, make a comment to the legislature, sign a letter, say these are our thoughts. It's not as if we're, writing, I don't know, whomever about, Mideast issues, something that's like totally not, directly relevant on municipal governance. So right or wrong, I do think we could. Is there general agreement that it's premature tonight to take a vote and say we're going to write a letter?
I'd be ready to support a letter.
Tonight, it would be? Yeah. I am not. I mean, is there support? We don't want to, is anyone going to have a, not tonight? So should we just, we'll keep the ball rolling. I'm sorry, Bob.
I was going to ask John, is there a timeline that TAC is looking to do this by?
So we're nearing the end of the legislative season. So if something's going to happen with this, it should happen soon. I mean, I would love if you guys did a letter tonight. I think if you waited till next select board meeting, that would be fine. Can I just make a few?
Sure, go ahead.
So yeah, I think you and Sean have it exactly right that this addresses a new power for the town, and it's appropriate for the select board, and really the select board, and it's appropriate for the select board to advocate for it or not.
Got it.
So I think it's a fairly crisp test. Something that I've noticed about Massachusetts is we're very protective of our local power. So I actually don't see the state trying to get this power. And as much as you want to, as I can tell that you want to put a camera on Route 3, this law will not allow that. we could put a camera on Great Road, but not Route 3 and certainly not the Mass Pike. So,
When you started to say camera, I thought you were going to say camel's nose under the tent.
and two things, which only one of which I can remember. But yeah, so I think the issue of it going to the person owning the vehicle, it's more like a parking ticket than a moving violation, right? That's why it doesn't go on your insurance. So if you've got a parking ticket, that also would have gone to your wife, and they really want to sort of make sure that it's not a surveillance tool, so it's not capturing who's driving it. And then Bopa, I think you had one other concern, which
Say that again?
I think you had one concern that has slipped my brain.
So why don't we agree to this? This will be the prerogative of the next new Mr. or Miss Chair to continue this discussion.
Yes.
So thanks for coming forward, John.
Thank you for having me. And thank you for accommodating us on short notice.
Ever forward, town meeting warrant. So Matt, do you want to start? And
Sorry, it was muted. As we get closer to budget season, you were looking for an update on, the issue that's been floating around, not issue, but the questions that have been floating around about the funding formula and the long-term, sort of prognosis of that. And I think about 2 months ago, we were talking about there is some legislation moving forward to potentially fund the cost, here that we're going to be talking about, but obviously as of today, no legislation has been passed yet. And so the discussion that, I was asked to provide some information on was specifically Hanscom Air Force Base students and Shawshene Valley Technical High School tuition. So this is for students living on Hanscom Air Force Base who attend Shawshene Tech. They're currently coded as Bedford residents and were assessed their tuition cost along with our overall tuition. I'm not going to go through this entirely, but again, just the overview. Some of the key facts are that the housing is physically located in Lincoln, but we've essentially been educating the high school students on Hanscom from around 1962 or 1963. It's been a longstanding partnership. So this traditionally involved Bedford High School, not necessarily paying tuition at other schools, some of which, didn't exist at the time. As of right now, approximately 38 of the students we're paying for are Bedford residents and 15 are Hanscom Air Force Base students. Our overall tuition this year is about $1.25 million. I'm going to just skip ahead just a little bit to the Lincoln piece. I wanted to just read it off so I'm not going to remember specifically. Okay. So again, to clarify, Bedford, under this longstanding partnership, has educated Hanscom students in grades 9 through 12 at Bedford High School. The elementary and middle school students on base are educated mainly through a contracted agreement with the town of Lincoln. So that's really the split. So one group of students, middle and elementary, contract with Lincoln, mainly on the base schools, high school, Bedford High School, again, and/or the technical high school. So that's just really how the breakup and the splits happen, as I understand it. And to just jump ahead to the current efforts, we've been talking for the better part of a year now, on and off with the town of Lincoln and Shawshene, letting them know that we're sort of aware of this. The first 6 months were probably just both the superintendent, Cliff Schwang, and I both being new here, just trying to understand the history. And there is a lot of history. We put some information in your packet going back to early 1963, when I think a few $100,000 for the Bedford High School was given to the town. And there was a vote of the school committee at that time that we would be having the Hanscom students attend the high school. And we've also been working closely with DESE, had some discussions with the base, as well as Ken Gordon and our legislative delegation. Tried to keep that all fact-based rather than opinion-based. This has been going on a long time, and that's sort of where we sit now. We have some legislation sitting in the legislature to hopefully fund specifically the Shawsheen tuition associated with the Hanscom-based students.
Ready for a few questions?
I will do my best, absolutely.
Okay. First off, I'll just make a statement. Yay, Shawsheen Technical School, right? You know, I think it's great that we have that ability to send our Bedford kids there. I think it's very important. And I support that, including, you know, I hope they wind up building a new, you know, Vogue, because I think it's important. Okay. So that said, if I understand it correctly, we have students who live in Lincoln, albeit on Hanscom Air Force Base, who attend Shawsheen, and we pay that tuition for those Lincoln residents. And you mentioned the word partnership or something. I think I maybe saw in the memo agreement. Now, what I think the crux of it is, I don't think we have a piece of paper where the town has obliged itself legally. And it seems to me that as we go to town meeting to, you know, ask the taxpayers to fund these things, it's fair for them to say, where's the legal obligation? Where's that piece of paper? And I don't think I'm missing anything. I think it's as simple as that. And working it out, because it's been happening a long time, might be, you know, difficult, but it's, wow, we're paying a lot, but not for kids who aren't Bedford residents. Is that kind of am I wrong?
So, no, I wouldn't say you're wrong. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's been the tradition going back maybe 50 or so years, but we haven't in our research been able to find any, I would say, legally binding agreement. I think there's some attorneys, whether it be in Lincoln or here, or, you know, in the past, in the 80s, 90s, that have maybe taken a crack at this and said, there's maybe some gray areas there. We do get a little bit of federal money. So there are some moving parts. We get some federal impact aid. For example, I think mainly, and based on the amount, the intent, you know, was really to offset the students going to Bedford High School. Certainly, if you dig into all the detailed documents, the federal impact aid we received does not nearly cover, you know, the full.
Those who actually physically attend the Bedford High School.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I must say, we got a lot of material this week on that, and I have not been through it all, nor do I think it's, you know, I mean, I can go through it. It's somewhat interesting, but I mean, it does smack of the kind of thing. It's a big dollar amount. And I hope we're using counsel on this, because if we're paying $1 million, and maybe we're not illegally obliged, or maybe we are, it'd be nice to know if we are with some actual guidance. Am I thinking about this wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think if the legislation, you know, does not pass this year by, you know, June, July, and we start, you know, talking about the next bill, where we're going to, you know, we can certainly double down on the discussions with the technical school, the town of Lincoln, and the base about, you know, I don't think from the very beginning when this came up, nobody questioned whether the base student should be going to the tech school. This is what we're talking about this evening, is purely where does the bill for those students go? It's this really DESE's responsibility to make sure, you know, children, I think, are coded to the town responsibly. And Cliff Schwang, the superintendent, let DESE know that he believed that there was a coding error here. And we're hoping that by, you know, bringing enough partners to the table, whether it's DESE or the base or the tech school, we'll be able to find an appropriate funding solution, so the students can still go there, but the bill doesn't, you know, maybe solely fall on the town of Bedford.
So, I'm sorry, do you guys mind me monopolizing the questions? And we've discussed all this, so I think I know what you're going to say on these. Is just sticking with the kids who go to Shawshene, right? And it's coded Bedford kids. I don't know what another Shawshene town is, but what if they coded Bill Ricker kids going to Bedford? It's you know, we're like the middleman. We're a stranger to should be a stranger to the transaction. Lincoln kids and Shawshene, they should work it out directly. I don't know why there needs to be intercession from Bedford. And you probably agree with me. And I'm not trying to be argumentative, but I am just so quizzical about how we're stuck in the middle. And I guess I do understand this. Something happened in 62, 63. There was an intent to continue to educate, et cetera, but wow, there's a big nugget. So I'll stop there. I think you get the point that it's, as we've discussed, I think we're on the hook, and I'm not sure why. So at any rate, hopefully I haven't said too many ignorant comments. Do maybe any other board comments, or do we want to invite?
I mean, if I or anybody misspoke, I would love if any of the committee reps could clarify that, or if you or I or anything needs clarified. But maybe we just get if there's a couple more questions from the board, and then I would love to have them.
Terrence, anything from you?
Yes, Matt, maybe you can help me with this question. Being a military brat and coming from Hanscom originally, when my family moved here, we moved to South Road, but my father was still at Hanscom. So how is that handled now, and how would that be handled in the future? So you have someone who's military, but they actually reside in Bedford.
Yeah, certainly. Not my area of complete expertise. My understanding is there are quite a few Hanscom families that live off base. You have the choice of either like on base housing or off base housing. My understanding is that if you picked a location separate, like in Bedford, that's not what this is relating to. That's my understanding. When Cliff reached out to do the research on this, I think he specifically asked and got this information from, I believe it was from DESE. I could have to double check with him on how many students currently residing, in Lincoln are being coded to us. So I believe he's double checked this data.
So are they counted as Hanscom students or coming from Hanscom, or Bedford students? Or you don't know?
It's coded as Bedford's.
Bedford.
Is my understanding.
I think Terrence was asking about, yeah.
Yeah, Lincoln doesn't currently have a relationship with Shawshene Tech, so, they would have, Lincoln doesn't have a relationship with the tech school.
But they're able to go through this coded as Bedford, right? No?
So
Why don't we, if we're gonna,
Yeah. Okay, would you mind?
no.
Thank you. And if you don't mind just introducing yourself to us and the folks at home.
Ryan O'Donnell, 30 Fayette Road, and I'm Shawshene School Committee from Bedford.
I'm Sarah Dorr, 2 Otis Street, Bedford. I'm another school committee rep for Shawshene from Bedford.
Lincoln, since Lincoln has been referenced several times, the town of Lincoln was for many years part of the Minuteman Regional School District. They have pulled out of that. I think they're probably sending some individual kids there, as have some of the other towns that have pulled out of the district. Our 5 towns, glad you mentioned them, Paul. The other 4 towns are for Shawshene or Bill Ricker, Burlington, Tewksbury, and Wilmington. And I will note that they have been very supportive over the years of the fact that Bedford and Hanscom has been treated as one pool of students for as long as anybody can remember. There have been Shawsheen students going from Hanscom to Shawsheen, certainly from the 70s, 80s, best we can tell. And in many years, there was only 0, 1, or 2, or 3 of them. There has been an upswing in recent years, just as there's been this significant upswing in the number of students. Just to correct a couple things that were said earlier, we are not talking about $1 million. And there was a reference to $1.8 million in tuition. That's the amount of the assessment that's total for Bedford. That is not just tied up to Shawsheen. So we want to
Thank you for the correction, truly. I have a question that in terms of students who have been to Shawsheen through the Bedford-Hanscom relationship, do you know whether or not Bedford's ever looked for or received recompense for paying the tuition for the Lincoln-Hanscom students?
You know, I think historically, I have never heard of the Hanscom students being at the high school level as being referenced as Lincoln students. They have been considered part, and this is something I know our superintendent, in fact, has talked to some of the prior superintendents that have proceeded here in Bedford. It has always been basically an adjunct to the fact that we've had this partnership going back to 1962 or 63, that we treat the Hanscom students as part of that. And the only thing that's changed in the last couple of years has been that the number has gone up somewhat. And also the fact, but again, the Bedford number is going up. And one of the reasons, and I said this recently to our superintendent here in Bedford, one of the reasons that we don't tend to talk about Bedford versus Hanscom or Bedford versus Lincoln is, as Terry referenced a few minutes ago, there is such a strong history of people who start out on the base and then move to Bedford. And therefore, and many times that transition takes place while kids are in high school. As people retire from the force, from the Air Force, they move up in rank or whatever the case may be. So I think some valuable issues have been raised here about funding, but this goes well beyond the Shawsheen issue.
Okay.
I would just add that also. I think that I'm personally just a little frustrated that this is coming up right now, right before town meeting, but also right after the Shawsheen School had their first ever lottery, which was this past Saturday. And I know that Cliff Schwang has been talking about this for 2-3 years. And when I got on board about a year ago, he mentioned, oh, there's an issue with Shawsheen, and then that was it with Hanscom and Shawsheen, and I never heard any much about it. Matt, you sent out about 16 documents today. I'd only seen before. I'd never seen some of this before. So it's clearly an issue that is on the mind of our Bedford School Superintendent. And I know that, just to let all of you know, that we have a meeting on Monday, this coming Monday, with Brian and me, both superintendents, Tony McIntosh, and then Cliff Schwang and Matt Hansen. And to my knowledge, it's the first time all of us have gotten together to actually have a conversation about this issue. So we understand that there are questions about it, but I've never been involved in it. And so we're just letting you know that we know about this.
And I would just add to that, it would be really helpful when there are communications from either the Bedford Public Schools or the town to DESE or the Department of Education, that somebody from Shawsheen be included on that correspondence today in the materials. And we do appreciate your sending them over today, Matt, around 3 o'clock. There was a letter of March 2nd, 2026, sent to the Department of Education by the superintendent. Nobody was superintendent in Bedford. Nobody from Shawsheen referenced. There was a communication from November the 14th, 2025, by the Bedford superintendent to DESE, asking that the students from Hanscom not be coded into Bedford. and then some follow-up. None of that, to my knowledge, ever was communicated with us.
Got it. Understood. So I think this is helpful. I'm not personally trying to stir up a hornet's nest. I just, understood that it is fair amount of money, and I just want what's fair, right? Whatever fair is, it's often in the eyes of the beholder, right? So I'm satisfied, but I will say, let the select board members, any other follow-up questions?
Well, thank you for having this discussion. I mean, 'cause I think that's important. The only question that comes to mind is I know every year Ken Gordon goes to the legislature and gets reimbursement for the Hanscom students that go to Bedford High. Do you know if that reimbursement also includes Hanscom students that go to Shawshene?
So this year specifically, Ken Gordon got $200,000. It was an earmark specifically to cover the full cost of the Hanscom students attending Shawshene. So $200,000 essentially nearly fully covered the cost this year. It's not a guarantee every year though, so that's why this year we're trying to get it written in that it would be a guaranteed funding source. But this year he did get the full cost covered for us, Ken Gordon did. So
And was that the first time in a while?
first time in, I think, at least the last 3 or 4 years that I've been here 2.5 years. That I'm aware of.
I mean, what would be nice is to have the whole thing there permanently, because I know he's tried to get it there permanently, and for some reason it doesn't get in the permanent budget. It has to be asked for every year, but it'd be nice if permanently there was that reimbursement for Hanscom students going to both Bedford High and Shawshene.
Yeah, because the only thing about, he could probably ask for it in his earmark every year, but each legislator is essentially given an amount from my understanding, how it works that they can spend. So if this one project was dedicated to it every year, we would, we wouldn't be able to do some of those other, fun projects that earmarks tend to fund, those community-based projects and things like that. So something that's going to be an annual or recurring cost would be much better.
Yeah.
In a funding bill.
Exactly, because, and I mean, I guess we're not debating state issues, but it only affects 2 towns. It affects Bedford and Bourne on Cape Cod because of Otis.
Chicopee, Westover Air Force Base as well, I believe.
Okay, so 3 then. Yeah. But again, thank you for having the discussion.
Keyshawn, Bopa, anything?
Just want to clarify, to go back. So first of all, thank you for working on this. And I know that Terrence had a different question from mine, but I want to make sure, like, in the memo that says 16 Hanscom students, the 16 Hanscom students resides in Lincoln.
I mean, Superintendent Schwang did the backup work of checking on these numbers and the coding with Desi. That's my understanding. We can try to triple check that.
So out of that 16 students, it's not the same, it's not the situation. They're not, those 16 students, whether it's some or most or whatever, they're not in the situation that Terrence was referring to. Because when I read it, I understood it as the 16 students resides in Lincoln.
Yeah, my understanding is there were 2 or 3 emails back and forth that I was CC'd on where he asked the specific question of how many of those students living on the base in Lincoln are being coded to Bedford, and he was given some information back with a breakdown of the student codes, so you're not dealing with names like student codes broken up by the town, and that's how the data was broken out. It was pretty, yeah, it was broken out that way. But I mean, yeah, if you have other information, I mean, I was just CC'd on the emails. I wasn't,
No, I think, Matt, you've captured it well. I think, if one were to take that logically, all of the students from Hanscom who are attending Bedford High live in Lincoln, or if they would live on that part of the base, but they've never been, they're not treated. The issue of residency, how it's defined by the Department of Education, how it's treated in our agreement, how it's treated in all of the documents, and the lack, and I think Paul made a reference to this earlier, the lack of formalizing this is a legitimate issue, which is probably good that we address. I think what we've tried to do, besides my limited communications with Superintendent of Bedford, is I think the Bedford as a community has chosen to support this relationship where the students choose when they leave 8th grade to go to Bedford High School or go to Shawsheen, to support them in every way we can. And the issue was brought up most immediately to us in the context of the fact that we had a lottery last Saturday. And 8 days before the lottery, we hear that there's a call being made questioning whether the Hanscom students ought to be put into like a second-tier lottery rather than merged with Bedford students as we have always treated them. That was a little disconcerting, to say the least.
So I would just actually follow up on that and say that, so this year was the first year for a lottery that was mandated by the state Department of Ed as well as the governor. And in that whole process, you have, one of the regulations is to have the Shawsheen School, am I echoing? It sounds just.
You're fine.
Okay, is to have the Shawsheen go to all the middle schools, all the 8th grades in the Commonwealth, and to promote, the tech schools. It wasn't just Shawsheen. And so we had Shawsheen, and they've been doing this for years, going to Bedford Middle School, the 8th grade, making a presentation. This is the admissions people. Also then bringing our 8th graders, all of them, over to Shawsheen to give them a preview of what the school's all about. That's also in the regulations, but Bedford's been doing this now for a number of years. But they also have gone to Hanscom. Hanscom has an 8th grade, it's middle school. And so you go and promote the school, and then Hanscom students came over to Shawsheen. So I think that it is definitely a gray area, and I'm glad that we're bringing it up because hopefully we'll get some resolution somehow.
Okay. And really, my hope was this evening, we'd talk about this a little bit, especially trying to identify any black and white, reduced to writing obligation the town of Bedford has. But it is otherwise messy, I agree, but I shouldn't have let it slip into stuff that is a little bit tougher and doesn't shed light on that. So mea culpa. Terrence, anything else, or should we move on? Up to you. But you get your shot at it.
I'll just do this real quickly because I don't want the night to run long. But the reason that we moved to Bedford was my father was in a war zone. And I'm not sure if they still have this rule, but when the military member, the primary military member, is in a war zone, the Air Force used to require the family to move off base for the simple fact that the military member might be killed in wartime, and they didn't want to have a situation where they had to tell a widow and her kids to get off the base. So if that still is a rule, you may have, given what's been going on recently, you may see more of that. You might see, Hanscom families moving in Bedford, and I don't know if that's going to be an issue.
I should just quickly add that all military students get federal impact aid. So from the federal government. So Terry, if that had been when you were in school, your family would have said, yes, we're military, and federal impact aid would have come to Bedford for your family, even though, and you lived here right in Bedford. So
I noticed in the memo that was the rationale for saying that
partnership, just as it has been with Bedford for the last 60 years.
Perfect, thank you. All right, Matt, in terms of action items, currently, the amount, the Shawshene tuition is in the budget, but as you say, it's going to be covered by the earmark, we think, so.
26 this current fiscal year.
Okay.
$200,000. And there's another piece of legislation that would cover the fiscal 27 amount if it passes.
If it passes, okay. So the question then is, do we bring that forward in the budget we present to town meeting? The Shawshene tuitions. So that's not a Matt question. That's a board question. I apologize. Any thoughts on that? So it's leave it in as we've done in perpetuity, and then does that affect our ability to push back? Should we decide to wait a minute, these students don't reside in Bedford, why are we paying it?
Don't we have to see if we get the legislation through? Isn't that what we're waiting on or no?
Yeah, I mean, to both those points, we are waiting on the legislation. I don't think necessarily having the funding appropriation would limit any sort of discussion or negotiation power we may or may not have if the funding, goes or doesn't go through.
We still have to.
I'll get to you. So put another way, if we didn't have it in ATM budget, we could put it in STM budget.
That is accurate. Yes. So if that is an option.
Is there anyone on the board who thinks that that's a good idea or a bad idea? Speak now or talk about it at the next meeting.
Oh, I'm a little lost. Could you reiterate what you're trying to?
Sure. I think currently in the budget, we have funding for Shawshene students who are at the base, who are in Lincoln. That's the earmark that not gone through. We can leave it in the budget for ATM or put it in at STM, I believe, without there being adverse effects, I think. Sean?
I think you leave it in the budget and still pursue the reimbursement or whatever mechanism, because ultimately we're going to educate these students. We're not going to, so I don't see what the point would be waiting. If we put it in the budget and get reimbursed, okay, great, we get reimbursed. And I don't see what waiting to STM would get us.
That's fine with me to leave it in the budget, but I would still say we ought to get a thank you note from Lincoln.
Yeah, and we should pursue what you're talking about and get.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Does anyone feel differently? I don't need to belabor it. Okay. I think we'll leave it in. Brian, did you?
Just because you raised the issue of funding, there is the superintendent of Bedford did make a representation to DESI that, quote, we are prepared, we are on March 2nd, a week ago today, we are prepared to take all necessary and appropriate legal measures to ensure that Bedford taxpayers are only paying for the educational costs for which they are legally obligated to pay as of July 1st, 2026. I'm going to assume that that wasn't supported or endorsed by either the school committee or this board in terms of any legal action likely to be taken to, that's correct, challenge whether those funds were forthcoming.
So we haven't taken a position on that, right? But I will say one person's opinion is we should only be paying things we're legally obliged to do, because I don't think it's fair to go to Bedford taxpayers and say, oh, please pay things that you're not legally obliged. And I do understand the difference between what are right things to do, legally obliged, and doing Lincoln, again, I think we should get a thank you. That's a little bit flip, I guess, but truly, we could flip it around and say, could Lincoln pay for Bedford students going to Shawshene, right? They haven't agreed to it either. So I know that sounds rough, but it's just one person's opinion. But we'll leave it in the budget. We don't have a case to take it out. Are there any? I beg your pardon. I think we're going to leave it at just, thank you. So anything else to decide on this?
Not on that budget article.
Okay.
A few minor tweaks to the warrant, and we have to just make our recommendation.
Anything else for our friends at Shawshing?
I really appreciate you coming.
So, yeah, the number has been moved because both of you have a committee meeting on Tuesday, so you narrow up Article 5 right near the beginning.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Because Tony will be here on the first night.
Yeah, we moved it up.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yes, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. It's tough issues. Okay.
I'm just going to read quickly what the few changes were, and then I think we'll just go line by line and vote our recommendations, if that's okay.
Yep.
The quick overview, and as of today, I really want to thank Al Rigo, our finance director, and the patience of the board and the community. We lost Joe Russo in our office throughout this process, and also our finance director, who's just been on board with us for 2 weeks now. So it's been a lot of work for him to catch up and help scrub all the numbers with us. And he's doing a fantastic job. He's updated the numbers in the finance committee report for us. We're confident those are accurate. We uploaded a slightly tweaked warrant in your packet today with the really crisp numbers. So that's what we'll be putting on the screen and discussing. Article 3 for the consent item. I had discussed this in a previous meeting, but we hadn't put the language in yet. Just the increase of $500 in the senior tax work-off program that is in Article 3 under the consent article now. Articles 28 and 32, we added one more word "or" for uninspected vehicles. And we added back in the free cash article. This is when Al and I were going through the budget. We realized that our goal was to incorporate free cash into each of the individual warrant articles now, so we wouldn't need this article anymore. And for most of the other articles, such as capital, for example, now we're going to just identify this article is funded through free cash. So we don't need to increase the operating budget and then put a bunch of free cash in at the end. The one exception is the DPW budget, where historically we have included road paving in the DPW budget, but we've always funded it through free cash. So we are going to need to keep this article in as Article 34 simply for road paving for the time being, unless in the future we decide to take road paving out as like a standalone warrant article. So that would be the other option we could do. But this is the process town meeting's most used to, is including money in the operating budget and then adding free cash to reduce the tax levy at the end. So that was the one other sort of breakout. And I may find one or two more things as we're going through it, but those are really the main tweaks.
Got it. Okay. Any questions from the board on that, Lee?
Not on the tweaks, but on other.
Yeah.
So that, okay. So can we go to our favorite article, which is now Article 26 as opposed to Article 25?
Yeah, start with that. Yes, no, I'd love to pull up the current language that's in the draft warrant. And again, we will have, we're going to be mailing it out this week. It doesn't have to be posted until next week. This board typically votes contingent upon final edits from legal counsel, which I am waiting on her to review this 26 language as well. But I'd love for us to put it side by side. If I missed something or we missed something, we can certainly change it. I'm going to now. Okay, great. I have it up. Did you have a specific?
Yeah, so I know the library directors had made a few comments, and I believe there's a such that's missing. And at the end of the third line, it says the appointment of department heads. I think we intended to put a such there. You have a such at the.
Oh, such in the second sentence, but not the first sentence.
Right.
Okay, so that's clear. It's typographical. That was not an intentional.
No, I appreciate that. I think that was one thing that Padma was referring to.
Okay.
And I know it was taken out about the library director, the library employees, which I believe was, we agreed to that because it doesn't make sense for the library directors to be managing specific employees, and they didn't even want that. The other thing that I think was in question here was the MGL reference, which they had wanted after library director. And can we talk about why that was taken out and whether it makes sense to put in?
Sure. Council hasn't got back to us on that specifically, but just through my experience doing this, I've been through a number of charter processes. I can almost guarantee that you would recommend you take that out because it can create conflicting language. Basically, the charter should be the bones. You don't want to put in additional clarifying language that points to something else that then you don't control. So as much as possible, we try to not do that. So for example, if the MGL in the future says that something else happens with school employees or library employees, we're now saying specifically what we're doing. So the whole point basically of a town charter is you're defining what you are doing differently than MGL. The only reason you need a charter is because you're doing something different from MGL. So there's 0 point in having a charter and then referencing we're trying to do MGL because MGL already exists. So it's just not a good practice in municipal charters to be referencing something that can change.
Okay, I can see that point. And I hope otherwise, or even with that, we're meeting the intent of what the discussion was with the library trustees, with them being excluded from your authority and having the such department heads to make sure that there's no ambiguity later. So I'm okay with that language now. If I have other questions, so
Adding the second such.
the second such, yeah. So the article before that on town elections, I know at the last meeting, Mark Siegenthaler had a question about, he had a couple of questions, and I think one of them is addressed by saying to move the date of the election by up to 7 days, which means that we can't cancel elections because we don't feel like having them or have them after a town meeting or something. The other point that I heard him make was about notice, and I think that's a fair point. I know you had said, Matt, that we do have to have posting and such, but would it hurt anything to say something like, if the select board chooses to move the date of town meeting, they shall give, let's say, 90 days notice? I mean, if the intention is to avoid Passover, we know when Passover is. And that way it would just make absolutely sure that we weren't in the middle of the election season, not that we would do that, but, just to be sure we weren't moving it kind of on the fly. Because I don't think that contradicts the intention of what you're saying, right? Paul, you had said this is mainly for religious things. We would know that well enough ahead of time and then make that call before election season.
I suppose so. I just maybe incorrectly assumed that under state law, we would have to give notice if there's a different date that would cover it, so that we couldn't be just arbitrary and spring it on, it's actually going to be a week later than you otherwise thought. But I confess I did not go and look at state law about when you have to announce the election, so I presumed. Is it?
That's fine. I mean, what I'm thinking is it wouldn't hurt to have that language in there because effectively, if we are going to move the date of the election, we would say so well in advance, right?
I think so. Yeah, we would, because I think someone determined, with the help of artificial intelligence, that let's say Passover would only, coincide with that date very rarely, but you can know that ahead of time. But Matt, do you happen to know what sort of notice is required under state law for changing an election date or giving the election date?
No, I'm not 100% sure. I think some of the practicality of it, the extended date that we're used to is partially because of the time it takes to print warrants, but I could see a time in the future where that then may change. So
So I must say, regardless of that, right, I think that on a practical level, the idea that we could monkey around with the date in some malevolent fashion is pretty remote. Like it was so remote that it's like, I don't know.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
But if it would make some people feel more comfortable enough to support this in town meeting and to take away even remote to zero,
I think that's a fair point. I'm gonna, we can leave it with the other board members, but I would say though, the more we have to add and monkey around with it, the worse. I'd rather just take away the ability to change it by a week. It's just adorning too much stuff to the charter, I think is just, it invites problems that I think are difficult to foresee.
I will say, it does look like in the MGL that it's at least 7 days or 14 days for an annual or special election or town meeting. Again, we're used to 45 days because of the printing of the ballots, but if for some reason in the future that were to change, there wouldn't be anything.
I must say that's not a very long time, so what do others think?
I think Sean makes a very valid point. And I believe at the last meeting we had, there was a longtime select board member who raised an issue. And so we might as well try to remove all ambiguity and doubt.
Is there a suggestion then on BOPA before?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah. Do you have any suggested language?
suggestion would be after the sentence that ends in 7 days, we would say, if the select board does move the date of the election, it shall give at least 90 days notice of such effect. Whatever legal.
Yeah, how many did? That sounds like a lot of days, 90.
I think 60 might be.
60 is fine too.
Yeah.
I could see us missing that just because we hadn't maybe checked enough ahead of time, but I think 60 is totally reasonable. You want it to be a reasonable amount.
Okay. Do we need a motion for that, Matt, or is that just?
No, when you make the recommendation on Article 25, I would just say as amended.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Anything else? 26, are there any other, before we get to whether we approve or disapprove, are there any other comments?
That's the substantive one,
Library.
26.
Yeah, Tom.
I hear what Matt's saying about putting in mass general laws. That generally is not a good idea, and I could be wrong because I can't pull up the charter. But I think that's done in at least one other provision. And my understanding was the library trustees wanted that particular mass general law in to sort of solidify the fact that whatever powers they have still remained.
So I think that if you look at, it's actually not a statute. It is like the entire educational and library codes, right? And the language, I think that prefaced the references were in keeping with, which I don't know what that means.
Is that chapter 78?
It was titled something or other, and it included 78, and it included,
Yeah.
I mean, I'd have to call it up, but I mean, just a voluminous amount of law, none of, which I think is particularly related to the specific issue they were thinking about.
I know chapter 78, I think sections 10 through, I don't know, whatever, deal with library trustees in general. So I'm just.
We can either, I'm against it, so I mean, you guys can decide. I'll keep quiet.
I appreciate what Matt said about, because then the section could change.
Bopa, how do you feel?
Sean.
Okay. Terrence, I think these two are keep it out. So do you want to, is that good, or do you want to discuss some more? I think Bopa and Sean,
Uh-huh.
their preference is to remove it.
Okay.
And, I mean, do you want to try to convince them more, or are we good?
The only thing I'll say is that, I do respect the library's trustees' position with regard to the charter. That's it.
All right, very good, thank you. Okay, Matt, do you think you have covered what you need in the, for 26?
Yes.
Okay. What else we got? Do we have?
Might hit a few more things when are we okay going through, starting at number one? We just have to make our recommendations. I'll just pull up the Excel tracking sheet. We'll take the votes, and then we usually assign a board member.
Yep. Is there any, would it be at all helpful to identify to, maybe in advance of us going through what the select board will speak to on the floor, what FinCom will do, capital and planning board?
I absolutely think that's a good idea. And I think in addition to that, there are some that we know we're going to take because of liaisonships.
Yeah.
So I think ahead of time, if we go and take those, so we know who has what to start with, and then we go one to one.
Okay.
So of the 34, the FinCom ones would be,
Yep, ambulance, so that's going to be, I'm just going to put Ben pronounced.
yeah.
Product activation failed.
Ah.
See that on Excel very often. Never seen that, actually. I've seen this as locked. I mean, we can take notes.
Okay.
You have a copy up? I don't have a copy on
Yeah.
our computer.
Okay, so the FinCom ones are going to be, if you can just populate the people speaking at town meeting on that would be FinCom for operating budget. And what article is that?
Operating is 13, ambulance is 15, free cash is 34.
13, 15, and 34.
Oh, you know what, this might, it is possible that I have your original Excel maybe before one article was, that was before Shasheen got moved up to Article 5. In the last 2 weeks, Shasheen asked to move to the front of the warrant because they're not available on Tuesday night in case we go tonight.
Okay, so I think it's operating budget 14, ambulance enterprise budget 15, right?
14 or 13. In this, think so? Because this is still 5, right? Yeah.
It's 5. Sorry, well,
This is
I'll let Matt figure it out.
what had we said? 15 is operating.
Yep, 15 is operating.
Okay, so we're good with 15 being operating budget?
Yeah, that's,
Is that what you have it as?
That's
Okay, all right.
Yep, 15 is operating budget, 16 is ambulance, and 34 is free cash. Yeah, so the hard copy you have in front of you is correct.
so those are FinCom.
Are there any other FinCom ones that you're aware of, Ben, that we're leaving out? Operating, ambulance, free cash. Those three, okay, thank you. Then
Take more if you want.
planning would be what ones?
Be any of the zoning bylaws?
Yeah, so 30, 31, that should be a 32 there. 30, 31, 32. Actually, the unregistered vehicles is a zoning bylaw 32, but that came out of really our office, my office specifically working with the code department. So I'm willing to prompt a select board member and the discussion about that. Because they really only brought forward 30 and 31 to us.
Okay, so not planning is the point. Okay.
they are having they're holding, by law, they have to hold a public hearing. They're holding it tomorrow on that article, prior to town meeting. And so they're in support of it. It's just, I don't know if we want to make them speak to it when we introduce the idea to them. I mean, I'm okay with them 100% doing it if they want to, but if they say, well, it was your idea, why aren't you doing it?
It's not the biggest, most important one either, right? Yeah, so
Refer to them, and if they don't want it,
we can do it. Someone, yeah. Okay. Then,
liaison one you shared. So like reports of officers and committees and debate rules.
Now, typically after election, we have reorganization, but are we going to do that this time around as well or no? Because our next meeting isn't until after.
Your next meeting will be the pre-meeting, the 30 minutes before town meeting.
Right. So
and we probably, well,
It would be pouring Dan in and saying,
yeah.
this-
I mean, I don't, I can work it out with Dan too. I don't mind
We just put
doing whatever.
chair.
chair. Yeah,
yeah, I think that would be.
yeah,
Take that vote.
yeah. Chair, it'll be either Chair Dan or Paul, and we'll arm wrestle or whatever as between those three categories. Who does them all? Sound good? Okay. All right, so you want to just start from one then? So that's a chair one, right? Two is chair, and three is chair, I assume? Revolving fund expenditure limits. That,
I think anybody could take it if they want, or could chair if nobody volunteers. There's no liaison for that.
is there any, you sure? CPC, is that,
APC is me, but you skipped Shawshing.
oh, yeah, that's, yeah, I'm looking at one that's,
Look at,
Oh, yeah, that, I think that's the only one.
okay, so, Sean will do, CPC. Then we have Shawshing. Okay. Okay.
I do 4 and 5.
okay, 4. 1 through 6. Next is the 2 capital articles.
I do 6 and 7.
Okay. PEG access,
I could do that one.
okay. Sped, is it sped ones now?
I think we've done it. There's only been.
Can we see if, our friend Dan would do that one, those two? He's not here. We'll take him.
He has experience on the school committee.
Yeah.
10 and
Bylaw. Okay. Are we gonna fund the bargaining agreement, please?
we had a really good meeting with them today, and I'm very hopeful that we'll settle next Monday. So by your 30-minute pre-meeting on town meeting, I'm hopeful we'll have a number we can announce to the public. When we get some time.
So I can do that one.
Article 14 is a citizen petition. I guess that's in the budget, but if it goes through, they would do it, right? It would.
I think they'll speak to it one way or another. I had a meeting with them today. I think they wanted me to get them a little bit more information on 2 or 3 areas, and then I have a strong feeling that it's going to be withdrawn, assuming I get them some follow-up information they wanted. So, yeah, it'll likely be them.
Then it's accrued leave fund,
I can do that.
okay. Then OPEB. And is FinCom ever done that, or is that select board?
I think you did.
All yours, if that's okay. Thank you. All right. Okay, Hero Act, Sean will, yep. Prudent investor rule. Okay. And by the way, are we not giving enough, giving short shrift to Terry? I'm not trying to push any on you, Terry, but if you want to grab any, like from BOPA, you can argue. Okay. So this is a good one. I'm the liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission, but I am obviously against Article 56, so I don't think that's fair to them for me to get up and speak to it. I think Terry said he was going to do that one. Okay, so charter amendments, I think I can do them all. I might come back to folks on the, see about the town manager's powers and see if maybe Dan will do it. But otherwise, I'll do all the charter bylaw ones, charter amendments and bylaw amendments. We said the zoning bylaw ones, with the exception, I guess, maybe of the unregistered vehicles, our friends in planning. Okay. And,
Didn't want to do it.
okay, all right. That one could be the most contentious of the whole town meeting. That'll bump us into a third night. That would be good. Funny. Yeah, no fooling. So I'm sorry. Anniversary fund. Terrence, do you want that one? Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Yeah, you were correct once again. Okay, so that's BOPA for the 300th anniversary. Bills of prior year?
Chair, if we have any.
Chair. Okay. All right. And then that's it, right?
Just gonna make our recommendations.
So I will say, with the exception of Article, I have a feeling, let's just say that everyone's in favor of everything on here, except for a certain piece of work who's not okay with the Article 56 and 56, not Article, yeah, well, the tax deferral, even though it's not a deferral, for renovated historic.
Bylaw Article 56.
Yeah. That one I'm going to vote, I vote not recommended, but I think I'm all by my lonesome on that, just guessing. And then the town manager powers. So if we want to just reserve those two and maybe see if we can take a vote on approval for all the others. Yeah, but then we can separately, just say a quick piece about the others, yeah.
With the maybe one clarifying comment that it goes without saying, Article 13, funding collective bargaining agreement is going to be recommended at town meeting, so not in favor, but.
Okay, so let me just, what are the article numbers, Matt? They're Article 56, tax deferral is Article what? 21. 26 is my favorite. And then the 13, you said, is the collective bargaining? We have the citizens petition, which is Article what? Okay. All right. So let me just try this motion and then you guys can correct me. I'm going to take chair prerogative. So I'm going to move that we recommend approval to town meeting of the entire articles in the warrant, with the exception to discuss here and after, Articles 13, 14, 21, and 26. Does everyone understand that we're, okay. So all in favor, please say aye. Aye, yeah. So that were 4 ayes, no nays. Okay. Article 13 is the collective bargaining agreement. I don't think we need any motion. We'll just make a recommendation at town meeting. I don't really need a motion on that. Same with the citizen petition. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Or actually, is there anyone who, as it currently stands, wants to move for disapproval?
As far as I can tell, what the petition asked for, provided the budget.
Yep.
So
I'm 95% sure that it'll be withdrawn. I spoke to 3 members of Mothers Out Front today that were happy that specifically with Sean's amendment that we go from $30,000 to $60,000. They seemed happy with that.
So then let's just wait until, because we're going to have a pre-meeting where we can decide it then. Okay. Article 21, I think I've said it all before. So I don't, this is about the credit. I think, I will just give you a little more information, not sworn in blood to be exactly true, but around the margins, I think, correct, so this opens up a potential credit. I don't think it's a deferral, by the way, but a credit for improvements for houses that were built prior to 1943. And spoke with the tax assessor, and there are approximately 350 houses that would qualify for that. And as I've said ad nauseum, I think actually that would go to developers who flip it and build the word I hate, but I'm going to call it this, a McMansion, versus the idea of someone improving the housing stock of those level of houses. So that's it. No need to belabor it. Does anyone want to make a motion to recommend approval?
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second? All in favor, please say aye. Nay, that's a nay from me. So 3-1, we recommend approval. Article 26, so it's funny, we haven't yet put it on the warrant, but I anticipate we will. Like, we haven't made a motion to approve the warrant, but I think that language is going to go through. So let me just, if I can read, and not for debate, I'll just get through a minute and not keep us here till the wee hours of the night arguing. That's not the point. So if you guys could indulge me. Bedford has a strong town manager form of government. Professional management is the reason we have it. I view the team principally to be the town manager, assistant town manager, HR director, and town council. No doubt I've left others who are pretty important, but Autumn. And all are skilled in municipal governance. The benefits, HR is in the hands of paid professional staff. Volunteer boards left with doing their thing, taking care of health, taxes, and library offerings. A volunteer should not be expected to discipline employees, ensure salaries are equitable compared to other departments, or keep up with HR law. So I'd say let's not move away from the town manager model of professional government, because that's what we would be doing. Lastly, there is a fair concern that the status quo risks a future town manager dictating what books may be lent out. That's my thumbnail version. So I would just say to that, let's be clear. There are only 4 people who currently, under the status quo and the charter as is, who have the power to pull a book off the shelves for any reason they'd like. And those 4 persons are 4 library trustees acting in a duly constituted Board of Trustees meeting. So I think leaving the charter as is very consistent with keeping the library a free institution. So that's it. Anyone else wishing to speak on this before we take a vote on approval?
I do want to say something before recommending or not recommending. But so first, I want to thank everyone who participated in this discussion. I know it's been an important and sometimes difficult conversation, and I appreciate the time and passion that many people, especially the Charter and Bylaws Committee, including yourself, Paul, the library trustee, boards and committees, and the town manager. Since the beginning of this discussion, kind of like you, my perspective has been shaped by the fact that our community operates under a strong town manager form of government. Because of that structure, I have generally believed that the town manager should have the authority to appoint, supervise, and remove department heads, with exceptions already clearly outlined in Section 3 of the Charter, such as the Conservation Commission, Council on Aging, Recreation Commission, and the Town Council. I agree with the proposal that the school committee or the school department should remain outside of the town manager's authority, given the distinct governance structure that already exists for the school. However, I have not been persuaded that the same exception should apply to the library trustee position. Although this has been my view from the start, I have remained open to listening to arguments and perspectives shared throughout the process. I carefully considered the case made by the library trustees for continuing the current practice. Ultimately, the arguments presented were not strong enough to change my position. In addition, the trustees suggested that we seek second opinion from town council, which I thought was a reasonable step. Town council has since indicated that the town manager has had this authority under the charter, even though different hiring practices have been used in the past, including the library trustees selecting the library director. For me, this reinforces the importance of having clear and consistent governance structures moving forward. I recognize that reasonable people can disagree on this issue, and I respect the commitment that library trustees have shown to the library and its mission. However, based on the charter structure and the information we've received, I'm voting no on recommending it.
Thank you, Bopa. And before I ask Terrence or Sean if they want to speak, I apologize. I just whispered a question to Sean, which I think is at a minimum not in the spirit of openness. We do have folks who are raising their hands online, and this is not a public hearing. I could let them speak, but I think we've heard it all. So I'm not going to allow people on, and that's what I just mentioned to Sean. So my apologies for whispering in a meeting. That's not appropriate. Terrence, anything, or should we go to a vote? Same with you, Sean. We can go to a vote or not.
I mean, I think we talked about a lot of this, but
Yeah.
one thing I will say is, at this point, I want the town to decide. I mean, I'm going to be voting yes and to recommend it, and and hopefully we'll have a healthy but respectful discussion on town meeting floor.
Amen. Terrence.
Just briefly, I'm only going to speak with respect to the library trustees. This is my first year on the select board, and I've been made the liaison to the trustees. And I have the utmost respect for all of the trustees, not only for taking on the role as trustees, but also for their expertise. In my knowledge and effort to be educated with respect to what trustees do, I've found that there's information that suggests that trustees should control library policy, manage library funds, and indeed supervise and hire the library director. Yes, we do have a very strong town management form of government, and our current town manager is very popular and does a great job. But my issue with the changes or the proposed changes are the fact that there is at least an argument that we're attempting to take power away from an elected board and shift that power over arguably to another elected board, the select board, because the select board obviously manages and supervises the town manager. And so it is for that reason that I will be voting against the recommendation of this article.
Yeah, just, I think, I think you mean voting for, right?
That's correct. I would be voting for. I'm sorry.
No problem. Okay. I think, do you want to just go ahead? I'll make a motion and I'm going to vote no on it. Or, sure. Yeah,
We could say.
yeah. Yeah, either way, it's going to be 2-2. So why don't we just not even vote and push it to the yeah. Yeah, okay, I think that. Yeah, okay. Very wise. Yeah, I'm not gonna, yeah, okay. So I think we made all our recommendations. We've assigned, have we assigned everything? Yeah, we did that. What's the next step? Closing the warrant?
I get a question. I mean, not to take a fly in the ointment of this because they've already been. But what if the town council were to come back with a substantial change? Schedule it. Okay, that's fair.
At least for the charter
We could
item,
do a
right?
floor amendment, and anything can be amended on the floor really, except for those general bylaws.
All right, do you think you'd make that so moved motion?
I think that's a
Yeah.
question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mopa, excuse me.
Question, typically we do videos. Are we doing that again?
Yeah, we were asked to do
I'll forward you the email. Brian just sent out an email.
I saw it.
Some of us might do them, some might not. We shall see. Yeah.
that. I think we should have a contest for who does the most entertaining.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I'm not going for the bait on that one. All right, but do we think we've exhausted this? Are we ready to let it fly? Sean, you,
So I move that we post the warrant as is subject to town council review and potential changes for legal reasons.
Second,
and that covers any, like, if you fix a Scrivener's error? Okay, yeah, okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it, 4-0. Great. Okay. Consent.
I don't really have anything unless you have questions.
Any issues on consent warrant, consent article?
So the finance director becomes also the parking clerk?
Yeah, that's the tradition here. I have talked to him about when the former special assistant next to be project manager in our office is rehired. If the board is amenable to it and he's amenable to it, I would switch that back to the project manager in our office. I feel like the finance director is, quite frankly, a little too high paid to be dealing with parking tickets, but it's always been in that office. We only get about 2 a year, so it's not a heavy lift, but just practically, it still seems, even if it's an hour of his time, that seems like a waste of his time. But
I would fight to the death on a parking ticket, quite honestly. Sometimes they're grossly unfair, but we all want to go home. Okay.
the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it, 4-0. Mr. Town Manager, you have a report.
So I know it's late, and we again appreciate your patience here. We just got this updated today. I also put together, for your convenience, maybe reviewing over this update on the status of our goals. I won't go through that TM report, and I do have a budget update that I'll have to upload in the packet later, just the third quarter budget update. Real quickly on the TM report, just a few things to highlight. We have sent out an annual town election and town meeting postcard. In the past, we've only done the town meeting, but we were able to get this out in time that it should land in people's mailbox prior to the election as well. So they're getting a reminder for both this year. One of the benefits of sending it out as a postcard rather than the full warrant, we're able to add a little bit more there. The DPW, this is pretty important. They're doing a phone survey. Remember, our DPW has multiple divisions, so their phone system can be a little clunky when you call. So they put together a survey to get feedback from the community on how they can improve that. I won't go through it, but if you've ever called the DPW and didn't like how that phone call went, pushing buttons, or who you got to, please take that survey. Help us fix it.
Question about DPW, 'cause I know there was some concern during the last storm that Republic Services was giving out text messages that were contradicting DPW guidance. Do you know if that's been addressed?
You know, I actually hadn't heard Republic giving out conflicting information.
Yeah, so,
That just didn't come.
I mean, normally our trash day is Monday, and if you look at the town site, which was correct, they said it was delayed one day. I know I got a text message on Tuesday morning that said, your trash has been delayed an additional day. And I was lucky because I already had my trash out, but several people had commented that they saw that message and didn't put their trash out.
Okay. I know we got several calls from the office on Tuesday, people saying, is our trash being picked up today? And I know we confirmed with everyone, yes, it's today, it's today, it's today. I didn't realize the crux of it was a text message confusing people. I just knew we were giving out the correct information. So, I'm sure DPW has followed up with that. That's probably why they didn't bring it to my attention, but I'll make sure that it's addressed.
Okay, thanks.
The comprehensive plan strategy working session coming up on Sunday, April 12th and Saturday, April 18th, and refreshments will be provided. So don't miss that. If you want to contribute to the future of our town. Excise tax bills are due March 23rd. Please call the department if you have any questions. MBTA, the ride, this is an interesting service through the MBTA for disabled individuals. There's a couple different sort of programs that they have available. So the Council on Aging, along with the Commission on Disability, is holding a joint learning session on March 26th at 11 a.m. So if you know anyone who has transportation-related issues, it would be great to go. And a few more events from the COA. They held a number of great events over the past month, a Super Bowl party, Valentine's Day bingo, and a Chinese New Year celebration. Always some great photos from them. We have launched a public survey on the future of the Wilson Park intersection. It's going to remain open only through March 25th. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of comments on that survey. We have a photo of Al Rigo, our new finance director and town accountant here. And congratulations to Chris Lasky retiring after 24 years with the town, and Catherine Perry with 14 years of the town, both retiring end of March.
Correct that name before you.
Catherine Perry. Oh, geez. Sorry, typo. We will fix that before we publish it.
That was probably Joe on his last thing.
He got this. Us. How dare he? Future jobs. I heard we did get some applicants for their school crossing job, which is a very important one to fill. So I think we'll have that filled very soon. And this is all of our standard spotlights on the last page here. I'm not going to go through the goals update tonight. You can read at your leisure. If you have any questions, call.
Okay. Liaison reports. Sean, you have anything for us?
No, I mean, actually, Matt covered what I was going to talk about. Comprehensive plan sessions.
Okay. Wilson Park, we went over items that we would consider must-haves or showstoppers. For example, a showstopper, might it be taking down the oak tree? I don't think that was considered a showstopper, but it's also, we're just identifying those, the showstoppers and the must-haves. And the devil will be in the details about the importance that you weight it, right? So, everyone might weight it 90%. It's not quite a showstopper, but pretty important. So we're still going through that exercise. And one thing that I think I want the board to think about is I principally supported Wilson Park thinking that, and this is me being a piece of work select board member, is that the principal reason was to alleviate the awful traffic congestion there. right? And that is not a must-have to improve that awful congestion. It might be weighted heavily, but for me, when I'm wearing my select board member hat, if we cannot have some level of hope, even reasonable hope that we can improve the traffic and the congestion, I'm not going to be supportive of it for other reasons, meaning being driven by pedestrian safety or biker safety. For both of those things, but I think we have to improve the congestion. And anyway, that's just my own personal bias. And I'm hoping not to spend, if that's a showstopper for the rest of this board, not improving the congestion. I really don't want to shell out money for, designs if we already know ahead of time that we're not going to be supporting work on it that doesn't involve that kind of improvement. So just something to think about. Other than that, nothing. Opa.
Recreation Committee met. They reviewed the revolving fund this year. It's a little down previous year. They're focusing on hiring staff for summer. They voted to keep the Springsbrook Park rate the same as last year. And they also, hopefully there's no more, with the nice weather now, there's no more school closure. But they had, they're planning to have an 8 weeks, and it's starting June 19th to August 9th. The Media Committee, right? Am I saying it right? Why am I blanking? Why am I blanking out on my committee? CMC discussed the approval of the next BCAD contract, and talking about BCAD, just want to thank Brian Herbert. As some of you or many of you know, he's been with us for 4 years now, and recently he just announced that he is having a baby in August, and with that, he is looking for a position next to home, so he received or got an offer for another position in Marblehead. So I just want to thank him for his service in Bedford.
And Derek, of course.
I don't have any updates.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else, Matt, before we get the motion of the night?
Well, we have something else to say before the motion. This being your last,
Although I will have the one before town meeting, but effectively a big public one.
effectively your last public
Yes.
display. Thank you for your time as chair. I certainly appreciated. I always appreciate you come and speak your mind, and you listen to what other people say on the board, and I've always felt like everyone's had an opportunity on the board to contribute, and I just appreciate you leading us for the last year.
I thank you very much for those kind words. You learn a lot, right? And after 3 years on the board, I hope that things go well Saturday. I don't want to be politicking in a meeting, but I would really enjoy another 3 years, because I think I will be that much more effective and, just better as a select board member. And just, I think, we've had enough interactions outside of this that it's kind of a fun group, to be quite honest with you. I really, it's a side benefit. We could really despise each other and still do a good job. But it just so happens I really like and respect each and every one on this board. So I appreciate that. Whenever I have reached out and asked people's opinions and what do you think, I've always had a welcome reception, and I trust that to the extent that it's been in reverse and folks have called me, that I've always been welcoming and enthusiastic. And I just think that, if I were a townsperson, I'd say, yeah, big deal, whatever. But I do think it makes for better governance, because you do have to compromise more than you otherwise would, and typically compromise is going to be pretty helpful for governing. So my long-winded way of saying thank you, Sean.
You said it very nicely. Thank you.
He's a smart guy.
what Sean said.
And I also want to say thank you. You're my first chair, and you made this seamless for me. Believe it or not, yesterday marked my first anniversary, so I'm no longer a rookie. But I always like the way that you're very inclusive and you have a very calming influence about you.
Thank you, Terry. And I love that I have a fellow Suffolk Law alum here. So I think we have a special bond, but I'm not going to cry. Okay. With that Love Fest over, do we have a motion?
To adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No nays. Thank you very much.